Hello, everybody, and welcome to a wonderful business spotlight interview here today. And we've got a very interesting gentleman to interview. We've got Steve from Hampson Group. Steve, tell us all about your business.
Where do you want to start? Businesses. I mean,
Businesses, wherever you want to start, it's your interview, Steve.
well, we started life as in a vehicle rental business. My father was a truck driver, but he repaired cars at home as a kind of income sideline. And he was offered a very small garage in Newark in Nottinghamshire to repair cars from. So he left truck driving, and went into car repairs. And at the time, I was at Nottingham University doing business studies, and I was doing his bookwork. So he wasn't administrative or financially minded. So whilst he repaired the cars, I would do the invoicing, the VAT, the purchasing, etc. And I was sponsored by Boots the Chemist to go into their distribution arm at Nottingham. So their head office was Nottingham, because my dad being a truck driver, distribution and the world of logistics held a kind of place for me, or I felt at the time. And obviously my aim was, when I was leaving university, was to go to work for Boots. But my father kind of didn't want me to leave, because obviously he would have had this void of administrative and financial skill sets. So I also didn't want to be tarnished with oh, it's your father's business and you're walking in, the usual, which I think probably is in family succession businesses. That's something that you very, very commonplace get tarnished with, really, as subsequent family members. So I said, we need to have a new idea, really, if I was going to come in and do something different. So I could see he was doing, at the time, he was doing breakdown and recovery. So I could see at the time that there was a need for vehicle continuance, and that came in the guise of vehicle rental. We were renting from a local rental company. So we went to the local car auctions at Newark and bought two cars. And I started a vehicle rental business alongside the garage. So we had a garage doing repairs and doing breakdown and recovery. And then we had two cars where we were renting primarily, to start with, to people that had broken down. So kind of that's how it all started. So I've never, other than Boots sponsoring me to go to uni, I've never worked for anybody in terms of, a job other than what I've created myself since leaving university.
That's sort of really interesting, sort of like foundation, sort of. So, did you expect that to happen, or?
No, not at all. I didn't expect my dad to be anything but a lorry driver, if I'm honest, because he had a passion for it. And as I was saying earlier, I used to go out in his lorry from the age of 4. So, I always thought he was going to be a lorry driver. I always thought I was going to have something to do with trucks or distribution or such like. And Boots were very good in terms of the experience they gave to me, because when you weren't studying and you had study leave, you would go and work in all their different aspects, which was fabulous. So I worked at head office, I worked at warehousing, I worked at distribution centres, I worked at Boots stores. So actually their foundation and their training, on the job training, was excellent, which kind of supplemented what the business studies I was doing at university as well. So it's a real good balance, really, of academic and actual.
Yeah, I know it's sort of the old sponsorship, training, etc. I mean, we were talking before. I mean, I started. Boots were a customer of mine, so a long time ago. But anyway, so you built the business up, and I believe you sold the rental company in 2007.
Yeah, we started in Europe, which was my family home at the time. We expanded into Grantham and Lincoln, because we felt there was a natural progression geographically to go to the next. Certainly in the east of England, and I think a lot of parts of England, it's very territorial, it's very parochial, and some of it centres around the parochialism of people living in the town. Some of it's around football and sport, as bizarre as it sounds. But we knew that Lincoln people wouldn't come to Newark to rent vehicles, or Grantham people at the time wouldn't come to Newark. So we opened depots subsequently in Grantham and Lincoln. Then we expanded more into the east. We went to Spalding and Boston. Then we had the opportunity to acquire a business in Kings Lynn that went bust. Then we opened in Cambridge, and then we acquired a business in Chesterfield, and we opened in Mansfield. So all of a sudden, we became, as a regional player, a very big player for the whole of the east of England. We were one of the first businesses to set up a collaboration with Six Rent a Car. So we did all their corporate bookings for our part of the world. We were one of only 10 private rental companies that supplied the Royal Mail, for instance. We supplied the police, we supplied the armed services. So we've got a lot of RAF bases in Lincolnshire and Norfolk. So we built a great portfolio. I joined the BVLA, the British Vehicle Renting and Leasing Association, as a committee member, and then worked my way up to become chair of the Commercial Vehicle Committee, and that in turn allowed you to be on the board of the association. So that was a great insight and networking opportunity to meet a whole array of people from, the head of Hertz Rent a Car, Avis, you name it. So it was a nice experience for me in terms of experiencing our particular sector of business. I was asked to sit on Business Link for Leicestershire and Rutland and Lincolnshire. That was a good insight again into local business. I did a stint with the government on advising on SMEs policy. So it was good to get this big wider view of commerce, really, rather than just a parochial view in the counties we operated. But I always made it known, and it was always our vision, that we would sell the business. That we were aiming to build the business to sell. So I think all of those times that I spent doing committee work and interacting with much larger global organisations, they knew that we were potentially for sale. So when we grew to thousands of vehicles, we would have a lot of people that would come along and make an offer or be inquisitive as to making an offer. But the offer's always about the money. And for me, the money would always have to be life-changing. We were making good money anyway as a trading business. So for someone to come along and write a check would have to be a check that really you could retire or semi-retire on. And interesting, we sold in 2007 to Northgate, who were the largest van rental business in the UK and Spain at the time.
Lots of stories there, lots of things. What's the biggest learning from that process?
I think it's knowing your vision and knowing your trajectory. I think at college, I always learned, the pyramid of goals in life. Set your pyramid, but make sure your pyramid isn't too large. Make sure it's not too small. Make sure it fits your own pyramid of aspirations, really. So our aspiration was to sell. Our aspiration was to grow the business. But I think if you are, and I say to a lot of people, when they're looking for an exit strategy, is number one is the people out there that want to buy you. So have you done your own work as to see what M&A activity has been in your particular sector? And then if there has been activity, find out who the suitors are, find out who the potentials are, whether that's VC, whether that's a competitor, whether that's new entry, whether that's somebody that wants your business to complement their business. So for me, it was always understanding who we could potentially sell to and how we would need to orchestrate that and position our business. And the one thing we were great at is building a team, because I hear this all the time, Tim. People say to me, "This business is all about me. I'm in at 7, I leave at 7, I do 60 hours a week," and I always feel more for you, because it's something you'll never sell. Because people don't want to buy you. They want to buy what you've built, but they want to buy a team. And we had a great team. We would empower all of our branch managers to run their own site as their own P&L. So incentivize them and their own team that was their own little business within our wider business. So you get the best from people in that. You get the best results, in my view. You empower individuals, you encourage them, and then so anyone buying your business can just step in and take that over. And literally ours was an all cash exit. We didn't have to stay on. There wasn't an earn-out period. We didn't have to prove our numbers post sale. We just took the check and went. And then they had a business that they could build and run.
That's a brilliant story. There's a lot of learning there for everybody. I mean, I think there's two massive points. One, begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Two, build and empower a team.
And I think sometimes you don't necessarily know what the end in mind is, Tim. I think when you're growing, the one thing you're initially doing is, as you know, and been in business yourself, is you're scrambling, you're grabbing. It's almost like trying to climb a cliff. You're trying to grab every rock that you can. You're trying to get higher and higher. I think it's like that. You're engrossed with building a business, but I think you get to a point where you've got to say, where is my end game? What am I? Am I aiming to keep this business till I retire? Am I aiming to sell it to my staff? Am I keeping it for family members? Am I wanting to sell? I think at some juncture you have to get that in your mind as to what your trajectory is going to be. But I don't think that's necessarily something you start out doing. To start out, you just want to make money and grow your business.
Yeah, so what you're actually saying there is actually think and start at the appropriate time. Think and start the exit strategy that you actually want.
Yeah, if you want to exit, and
Yeah.
I've got young family members, so you kind of could have been very easily where we became a generational business. But that was never our agenda. But what people's agenda, where that is their agenda, I've got no issues with that. That's brilliant. Absolutely. Empower your children. To take over, and it's great to see generational family businesses.
Mm.
I recently had a haulage business, ironically, that came to see me from Norfolk, and the grandfather, father, and son all came, and 3 generations that were all still in the business, which was fabulous to see.
So brilliant. I mean, one company springs to mind, Everard's there, isn't it? I mean, sort of,
Yeah,
which is a wonderful company still. So next stage was you exited. What was, I mean, now you've got Hampson Groups. Tell us a little bit more about that itself.
I think the other thing is when you get to exit point, and I speak to a lot of business owners. A lot of my friends and peers are current business owners that want an exit strategy and want to get to an exit point. I think the next point is getting to that vision of exit, but then what is post-exit? What does post-exit look like? Because most people think post-exit looks like sitting on a beach, driving the car you want to drive, living in the house you want to live, and that's it, it's utopia. But the problem is, we all know the one thing you engage in all the time in business is this mindset. It's hands and minds. And I think the minute you go from 100 mile an hour, which is running your business, to 0 mile an hour doing nothing, I see it many times where people have health issues, mental health issues, etc., etc. And I've seen, sadly, I've seen some really, really dark stories of people having an exit and then not being able to, really savor the fruits of their labor, really. So I think you have to have a strategy post-exit. So ours was, as we grew, we decoupled our property from our trading business. So our property was in a different our trading business. So we sold our trading business, but we didn't sell our properties. So we became an overnight landlord when we sold. So it immediately gives you a sense of purpose, but it gives you almost a non-active trading business, because property, it's not a day-to-day trading active business. So it enabled us, all of those sites that I mentioned, enabled us to become landlord immediately. And then actually, I quite liked it. I quite liked the commercial property, developing property, chatting with tenants, interacting with tenants. So then I started to grow that as a business. So we did 2 things when we sold. Number one was the usual thing. We put some of our monies into the financial markets run by a team in London. And then we put some of our monies into doing our own things. And within Hampson's Group, we have those 2 investment streams. So one's financial markets, one's commercial property, and then the third one is assisting startups. So, somebody coming to me with an idea and they want some money, pitching that to me, and then, going with them. And some of that is money and resource. Some of it's just money. So we did those 3 streams, really. The biggest 2 is certainly financial and property. And that's what we've done ever since, really, in terms of It's quite passive for me. I don't need to be involved every day, which is nice, but it certainly gives you enough, as much or as little as you want to keep you engaged.
No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point, Steve. So you mentioned as well that you do a lot of charity work.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
I've always been a believer of, if you've done well in your life, you've got a moral responsibility to give back, and I believe that. I've always believed that, and I think, I didn't come from money. We were a very low income family. Born in a council house, didn't have a car, didn't go abroad till I was 17. So it kind of teaches you about respecting life, about respecting people, about respecting money. But also it makes you realize and understand people that haven't got things in life that you do get when you become successful and financially better off, that you've got to assist those that aren't. Now, I'm not advocating that everybody goes off and sets their own charity up, because some people will set foundations, or other people will write a check out to their local charity or sponsor somebody or whatever. So it doesn't matter in what guise you assist, but I think everyone has a moral compass to assist when you've done well. And I think, again, I think quite very often, Tim, you get people go, yeah, and luck never came into my life. I did all of this, there was no luck. We all have a luck, and the thing about it is, in business, as good or bad as you are in business, we all have those lucky breaks. We all have those contracts that land on your desk. We all have those, those big opportunities. And that's luck. That's where you have good luck. And then sadly in life, people have bad luck. So I've always been supportive of the local charity community. And when I sold in 2007, I was sat on the Business Link board, and there was a good friend of mine, Hayden Biddle, who was the chairman of Bateman's Brewery, which was on the East Coast.
Yeah, yeah.
And Hayden at the time was the chair of the Prince's Trust charity for Lincolnshire.
Okay.
And he wanted to step down. So he said to him, look, my colleague on my board, he's got nothing to do. He's just sold his business. He'll take my place. And he almost did that without even asking me. This is the kind of guy Hayden was. So I went for an interview in London with the Prince's Trust. Interesting, there was another guy there who was new, and he was the chair for Leicestershire. And him and I became friends, Tim Maxted and myself. And so we said, rather than do things singularly between the two counties, why don't we do something collectively? Because our mindset for fundraising was the same. So we put on our first ball ever, which was 2010, and we raised 6 figures, which the Prince's Trust had never seen from private fundraising in the region before. So they immediately said to us, would you kind of look after, the wider demographic of the East Midlands, so Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Lincolnshire. So we became co-chair. We did 3 years between us, raised with match funding close to £1 million for Prince's Trust, and loved the journey, great journey. But you soon realise that, as amazing as charities as a Prince's Trust is, behind the scenes they have a marketing department, they have a business development department, they have loads of celebrities that want to work with them because it's a royal charity. So they have this big infrastructure around them. And at the time, they were an 80, 90 million pound charity. But you realise when you interact with the local community that they don't have any of that. It could be you and I, Tim, working in a charity together, just 2 of us, but delivering great results for the local community. But we're a 80 grand a year charity with no cost and no overhead, but equally no resource, or very little resource. So 3 years after the Prince's Trust, we started the Star Trust, which was a completely new concept, where we raised money from events, and then we made a pot of money that local charities could pitch for. So this is our monumental year. So we've just broke through the £1 million mark. So we've given away £1 million in that time period. Thank you. We've assisted 140 different charities in the region, and we've touched close to 90,000 lives. So it's had a big impact in the region, but an impact for those smaller charities because the criteria has to be that they're an SME style charity. They've got to be based in the East Midlands, and they've also got to be very open to us. We kind of lift the lid up, look at their finances, look at how they're raising money, how they're spending money, what their overhead base is, etc., and we go and visit them. So that's continually rewarding. It's hard. It's particularly in today's climate. It's hard for any charity to fundraise, but it is so rewarding.
Brilliant. What a wonderful story. That was absolutely fantastic. So whatever happens, Steve, you're leaving a legacy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, my take the Star Trust aside, and anything I do work aside. For me, the legacy is what you can do for your own children. You know, it's a little bit closer to home for me in terms of my heart. The rest of what I do, you know, I just feel there's an obligation to do that. There's an obligation to give back, as I said to you before. You know, the nice thing is, you know, as an entrepreneur in the UK, you are creating something. You know, when I look at the businesses that we've owned, the amount of people, you know, it's got to be thousands, if not 10,000 people that we've employed over the years. You know, the families that you've generated income for, the communities that you've helped. For me, you know, that's all part and parcel of being an entrepreneur in the UK.
That's brilliant. And I think to end on this note, I just picked that one word, which I think now is even more important in this day and age, is community. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. I think it's, you know, I've always been passionate about my local community in particular, you know, and always been supportive of, you know, particularly, you know, the real estate investments that I've made. You know, my hometown, I've done what, 9 or 10 real estate investments in my hometown, and given them a catalyst to attract new businesses to the town, given them opportunity for, and I'm the sort of landlord that will, you know, okay, it's fine attracting, you know, Boots, Halfords to the town, but you know, also you've got to give opportunities to the new startups where, you know, they're struggling to get premises because they haven't got the trading history, they haven't got the, you know, the A-class credit rating that a national has. But you know, for me, it's as important to give them an opportunity and a platform for them to be able to grow and develop. And I think, you know, if we always had this view when we were in a trading business, and I still have it now in an investment business, is that I always try and spend locally. So if I can find somebody locally, you know, to put doors on a premises, you know, produce me work where, you know, put windows in a building, I'll try and look for local tradesmen as opposed to somebody that's from outside the region, because for me, it's that inward investment that then assists the whole community really. So you're right, community is important from a business aspect and a charitable and aspect as well.
And it's also good for the soul, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you do meet a lot of people, I think, that, you know, make a lot of money, and I meet a lot of people that made a lot more money than I have. But you know, I think that we're misconstrued in the UK that we believe richness is a monetary value, which it isn't. You know, richness of life is the quality of life you have, the love that you hold for those around you and those hold for you, and the respect, vice versa as well, that you hold for people and they hold for you. And for me, that's the important richness in life, being able to get to a point when you're happy with what you have in life. And then when you're happy at that point, is what can you do then to make others also benefit from that? And that's again where I think that whole kind of round circle of giving back comes really. And then you know, I believe in positivity, Tim. You know, giving it, receiving it, and I think, you know, you know, that goes definitely in a round circle.
Brilliant. What a wonderful way to finish this fantastic interview. Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity.